Chris DeBoard here for the Dirt Drop, taking a chance to be able to thank our sponsors for making this program possible. First, we do want to shout out Stage Wheels. Bill over at Stage is kind enough to be able to provide the Dirt Drop with not only support for the Toolworks racing program, the Dirt Drop podcast, but also has a discount code for anyone who wants to be able to purchase products on their website. Make sure to check out the description in this video for the code, the Dirt Drop, to be able to add for a discount on your next order. They ship wheels and merchandise out of Richmond, Virginia. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram at Stage Wheels and also on their website, www.stagewheelsna.com. Next, we want to be able to thank Velocita USA out of North Carolina for all of their support they do, again, for the Toolworks Racing program and the Dirt Drop podcast. They offer racing equipment from head to toe for all your safety apparel, custom pit t-shirts, and so much more. Make sure to check them out at velocita-usa.com or on their social medias, Velocita USA, Facebook, and Instagram. When you go to order, make sure to use the code TDD10, that's TDD10, for 10% off all Velocita branded products on their website. Last but certainly not least, wrapped in our Stage Wheels is Zek Nova Tires. Thank you to Luis Lands out of Florida with distribution in Chicago, greater metro area, and Toolworks also does support in the Richmond and Mid-Atlantic area for distribution as well. If you have any questions about the products Zek Nova offers, be able to check them out as well. Zek Nova US on Facebook and Instagram, as well as www.zeknovaus.com. Now let's get into our show. What is going on, Dirt Drop Nation? This is your host, Chris DeBoard, here for another episode of the Dirt Drop Podcast. Before I get introducing my wonderful guest today, we want to be able to take a chance to mention our sponsors. Right behind us, we've got Stage Wheels out of Richmond, Virginia. Shout out to Bill for offering some fantastic wheel designs in all sorts of sizes and bolt patterns, as well as being able to have a racer development program that you can be able to apply for discounts on all Stage Wheels products. Make sure to check them out, Facebook and Instagram, Stage Wheels, also at stagewheelsna.com. Of course, wrapped up in Stage Wheels, we've got Zek Nova Tires. Shout out to Luis Lands out of Florida with distribution out of Chicago, and Toolworks here in Richmond, Virginia, to be able to offer Zek Nova Tires to all the wonderful customers across the country. Luis has a fantastic program as well, so if you're looking to get on his driver development program, make sure to check them out also, Facebook and Instagram, as well as zeknovaus.com. Last but certainly not least, let's shout out Velocita USA. Fantastic amounts of apparel and safety gear, everything from your helmets down to your shoes. You can also be able to save 10% on all Velocita branded products by using the promo code TDD10, that's the Dirt Drop 10, at velocita-usa.com on, again, 10% all Velocita branded product. Now let's get into the show. My guest today is a stranger to no one in not only the professional drifting world, but also in the grassroots community. He makes some fantastic parts. He's got a sultry, smooth voice, and he is the arm drop king. Let's give it up for Mr. Matt Soppa.
Yo, Chris, what's happening?
Dude, I'm so excited about this. I've been thinking about this for a minute just because I've been following some of the stuff you've been doing behind the scenes of FD, and I don't think people give you enough credit for how much you are in tune to the grassroots drifting community. So let's give you a chance. Who is Matt Soppa, and how did you get started in drifting?
Oh, man. Appreciate that comment because I feel like the last couple of years have been dropping off the grassroots stuff. But yeah, it all started 2009 was my first event at US Air in Shawano, Wisconsin. It's where I originally hail from. And my buddy Doug Artis, who was already working for Formula Drift at the time for about 3 years back then, was always bugging me to do events or at least go to a drift event with my first Mustang. Was a 1986 GT, and that car had no direction at all, and just I built a motor for it like 3 years prior and finally took it. It was like July or August. It was summer 2009. And as everybody does on their first event, it was a complete disaster. I think I have some footage somewhere of some probably 320p video of some runs. So the car had no angle mods. And if anybody knows anything about Fox bodies, they have terrible stock angle. You can barely turn around in the street. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. So that car had like 400 something horsepower, and I think Doug let me borrow some 215s on 16s that were just, like riding on ice. And, growing up in winter, I did have some sense of car control, but that car, I found the limits real quick. And I did okay at best, I think, by the end of the day, because I was able to do, like, I don't know if you're familiar with how US Air is laid out or anything up there. Okay, so they make any newcomers start at like the skid pad. And then at least when I was there, because I moved here to Arizona like almost 8 years ago, they make you go on the skid pad. And once they see that you could at least do a donut or a figure eight, you could go on the intermediate. And Doug let me have like a driver FD banner. I had it on my car. I thought it was the coolest thing. And they're like, first time lining up, they're like, I forget who it was. I bet he's still with Club FR, but he's like, oh, you got the FD banner. You know what you're doing. I was like, yeah, okay, let's go. And I'm ripping like a really wide, like just a really broad circle. And they were like, ooh. And then I got an intermediate somehow, and that's where I stayed that day. So that was my first time drifting, was 2009. And then I didn't really get back into it until about 2014. After I bought my first S197, that's a 05 to 14 Mustang. So it was a 2005 Mustang. I sold that red car that I had for like 11 years to buy that car, and didn't have any angle mods on that, but that car was a lot better. And Slide Society out of Wisconsin, they're in southern Wisconsin, Madison area. Mark, can't pronounce his last name. You may or may not know who runs that, but he put on events in Columbus, Wisconsin at I think it was Columbus Raceway or something, but it was like a circle track, and they had some infield stuff. And did some stuff. Started back in 2014 and just gradually got into it. But the end of that year, like it was like wet, almost backed that car into a wall. And that car had like 38,000 miles. It was a really nice car. And back then, I only bought it for like 13 grand for that miles.
Of course.
Now they'd be like double that today for whatever reason. And after that, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should get back into a Fox. And that's when, that same year, 2014, I bought my Fox as a roller that I have now, which then I went ham sandwich on that. I actually put a 3-valve in that car.
No way.
But, long story short, I got one for free because I bought two rod knockers. Like back then, 3-valve parts were still worth something, and made money and got a free engine. Like I just rebearing the one. I didn't even take the heads off. I just rebearing the rods and the mains, and had a 300 horse motor, and stuffed that in there with like OEM parts. I did like OEM angle mods without an angle kit, did without a hydro the next year, 2015. And it was still like a cool little street car because it had half a cage. So yeah. And then 16 was when I had the angle, and then and then I was like, oh, this is the jam. And then I think 17 was my first Pro-Am. I did MDU, did one round because the closest one was in St. Louis. So that was like an 8-hour drive from where I lived, because I lived like a county away from the Upper Peninsula. Rhineland, Wisconsin. Yeah, so that's where I hailed from. That's where I grew up. And so I did road around at MDU and qualified. And that's when they only did 16. Like there was some pretty big hitters out there. And I was in my 300-something horse Fox, just doing my best. And I went up. My first battle was against some guy named Noah, or his last name was something. But he ended up later that year he had a turbo LS240. So I was like, but we kept on like zeroing out and kept on going. We went 2-1 more times because none of us could put a run together, either because I was too slow and not enough angle, or he couldn't follow me. I really don't recall, but so I was like, okay. I went 2-1 more times against someone who ended up getting their Pro 2 license. So that's and then 17 I moved to Arizona. But then Doug, who also, I guess we could rewind back a couple years. I feel like I'm ranting, but this is
no, this is Genesis to where we're at.
All right. So back in 2015, we'll roll back a few years. Doug wanted me to volunteer at a Formula Drift event with him. So we drove from Wisconsin to New Jersey at the wall. And went to, we went in his like '07 mega cab with a bunch of BMX bikes in the back. And so we volunteered the event, and I'm like, going to age myself here because I was 30 that year. And I'm volunteering at the track, just picking up cones. I didn't even have a radio. I was like, what am I doing? Like, but it was a lot of fun. Like, it was the first time I experienced seeing a drift car like gain speed in drift. The first car I saw, and of course, I'm going to give Doug some shit here. He forgot to tell me where.
Before we move on, I know who Doug is. So Doug
Oh, yeah?
Vanderbrink, I believe you're talking about, correct? Yeah.
No, Doug Artis.
Doug Art. Okay, I was about to say you're talking Doug so much.
I do know
I'm like,
Vanderbrink,
that's
too.
about the same. I was about to say that timetable is lining up. So, for the viewers who are not aware of the other Doug, can you kind of get a little backstory on him, just so we kind of can follow?
Yeah. So Doug Artis got into FD, like I said, in 2006 or 5. So he was like one of the OGs, and worked like the start line, and then ended up doing race control. And people remember him most. He had the Oakley over the tops.
Yes,
that's what he wore, and he would come back to Wisconsin with like the weirdest tan lines and stuff. So he's a very, very interesting character. And this is back in the days. Like he was such a weirdo. He would drive from Wisconsin to all the FD events, like in his Honda EG hatch or whatever alphabet Civic it was. And he would do all these shady Craigslist deals, buy BMX parts on the way. Like it's so funny. So yeah, that's Doug. And then so I volunteered that year in 15, and then the following year in 16 did the same event. And the BMX bikes we would take, like after the event, we'd go BMX in Manhattan. So that was an experience too. We did like, yeah, that's like, I've never been to New York until that time, and we're just like bombing around in 20-inch BMX bikes, as full grown adults. But that's probably the best way to get around New York, to be honest with you. Like, it's driving, it's insane, like the traffic and stuff, but you can just beat traffic. And like the best part was weaving in and out cars and stuff. That was really cool. So then 16, we did the same thing. And that's when Doug quit race control. Middle of the year was kind of weird, but I digress. And then the January of 2017, Doug had his wedding, and other FD people came to his wedding, and the guy that was going to take his place, Pat Chantilly, we got a little tuned up, and I was like, hey, let's, what do you need a spot? I need someone on the track. And so, we got hammered and struck a handshake deal. And then 17, I missed Long Beach, never heard from Pat. I was like, oh, well. And then a couple weeks before Orlando of 2017, he's like, hey, you want to do track things with FD? I was like legit, not just voluntary. And he's like, yeah, sign me up. So yeah, 17 was a big year because that was the first official year with FD as a staff member. And then the end of 17, I moved to Arizona. So so there's a lot happening.
That's where we're at now.
Ish. Yeah. A lot's happened even since 2017 too. So, not soon after moving to Arizona, as some people may know, I built a rear wheel drive Fusion and Coyote powered. So that was like the first build, and that's kind of what has made a little bit of a name for myself as far as like knowing what I'm talking about with Fords and Coyotes and whatnot, and learned a lot too on how to not make control arms for angle kits and do it the right way. Like big shout out to Justin Pollock. Not many know that he helped me out with parts on that thing because he thought it was the coolest thing. And that was bought the car in 2018, May 2018, and then got it done in like a year and a half, and still have it. Just hangs out in the trailer and gets put away wet, and it never has issues. I think only when I get hit or people hit me. So yeah, that's.
I mean, for being a turnkey build, or not turnkey, but for being something that's like dead nuts reliable and you could just kind of beat on it. There's something to say about that.
Yeah, and I attribute it to. It's like I built it so that the parts aren't so one-off. Like the only custom parts really are the welded-in brackets to have the Mustang subframes in there and drift stuff. All the coilovers are all just Mustang off the shelf. Transmission, motor, they're actually just stock units. And
Okay.
yeah, it's a 2016 5.0. Um, I mean, besides the rear-wheel drive fusion part being Frankenstein, the drivetrain is too. The six-speed is out of a 2007 Shelby GT500. So it's a
Okay.
CR6060 that comes in a lot of OEMs. It's basically the OEM T56 Magnum because it has like an integral bell housing, and because those come in like the Challengers and Camaros, but only in the GT500s. And come to find out that transmission has such long legs, like first gear will rev to 50 miles an hour. And I started that car geared, had 315s in it. And I was like, no way. Now it has 409s and it's still not enough.
Wow.
So yeah,
So I'm trying to think now because that's still an 8.8 Ford rear end, right?
it's a Super 8.8. Yeah, so it's in 2015 IRS they call it a Super 8.8 because it's like a strong. The ring gear's still 8.8, but the pinion is like as strong as a 9-inch would be.
That's and still have the IRS like a 2011 or what's that 9 to 11? I'm trying to remember the Mustang.
2015
breakdown.
Was the first IRS. Like, yeah, and that's
okay.
Like, dude, that it was a B6 dropout. I think I got for $600 shipped because there's so many IRSs now. Like,
insane.
Right? Because like the only way you could get an IRS in the older vehicle Mustangs, and excluding the 197s, was if it was a Cobra, and so those are like pricey, and then it takes a lot of parts to make it good. When it just takes like some vertical links, camber arms, some better bushings, and you're set. The S550 rear end has a lot of toe gain. I noticed that when I just lowered it, the toe went like, I was like, this thing is going to be grippy, but then when you let off it, the nature of it, it's going to loosen up. So
now is that on factory suspension arms for the toe gain for that kind of a rear?
Yeah, like I just put the BC coil. I put the BC coils on and lowered it like I don't know how many inches, and I was like, oh, that thing towed in like a metric ton. So yeah.
So as far as all right. So for anybody who's following, obviously on adjustable coilovers, you can raise and lower the car, but different suspension geometries in the rear. Like for example, I have a Nissan G35 sedan. They do not have a lot of mechanical grip in the rear. Even with the FDF kit, with the super grip kit, we gained a lot of bit, but they don't squat like a 240 SX or a S1 or a S550 or something like that. So having that as an advantage for just off the shelf kind of attributes to why, I mean, RTR has the blank check budget, but just why that brand is still so successful, even in Pro-Am and ProSpec. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, there's RTR, I don't know how they do it, but they have like some sort of dynamic toe gain. It changes, so it's not just one way. But I think that attributes to why regular Mustang people crash their car all the time, because first of all they lift, they never lift, and then so that thing gets loose because it's not like it's under power, and then rubber bushings, this, that, and the other thing, and it just ends up in a yard sale most of the time. Yeah, I mean.
Go ahead.
I haven't really competed much besides like some grassroots stuff in the Fusion. And by the time I finally got like 18-inch wheels on that thing, because Variant Wheels sponsored the build from the get-go, and the smallest wheel they made was a 19. And so I kind of grit my teeth with it because there's no really good tires. They would either come apart, and it was before I put some Fusion specific flares on it that I couldn't run like enough positive cambers. So the tire wear wasn't that great. And so I just wasn't really happy with it. Like the car was kind of slow, like very slow. And now I got 18s on there, and with a regular Mustang offset, because it's like 2.5 inches wider between the Fusion track width and a Mustang. Even though we didn't touch on this, that the stock Fusion rear suspension design is identical to the S550. So
interesting.
That subframe, the Mustang subframe in the rear of the Fusion, the spring perches lined up, the shock mounts lined up, the rear subframe holes lined up, and then then the front subframe holes are off by just like 1.5 inches, and that's the only adapter plates I had to make in the rear was to make that, like welded a plate or bolted it, welded it, and then drilled and tapped a plate for the stock bolt to go through, and then had to do a little bit of floor work, which ended up taking out my ability to run a stock fuel tank, which I was kind of upset about, but is what it is.
But wait a minute. So you have a front wheel drive car that was essentially 90% bolted in the rear to make rear wheel drive. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, I shit you not. I had that car technically rear wheel drive in about a week. Like
God, what?
before I even before I even took the front wheel drive stuff, it technically I was like, I'm gonna figure this out first if this works. Because I was 85% sure doing my research that it was gonna fit and I was 85% right. I'm like, if this works, then I'll commit. If not, then I can fix the car. Because I got it from Copart for like $3,500. It had like 30,000 miles. Still no airbags went off. The AC still worked.
Nice.
It still smelled like a new
Okay.
car in there. Sometimes it still does because it has a stock dash in it and the door panels. But the yeah, I was like, it was the most expensive way to get a 5x4.5 bolt pattern, but it was also rear wheel drive with a Mustang diff.
You take your wins with your losses at that point. So we're gonna back up a little bit because you drifted a Fox body in 2009. I think
Yeah, but
when
I definitely wasn't a pioneer of that.
no, but still, I mean, you had the S197s, you had Ford Racing, Ken Gucci was in a Mustang. You had
Yep.
obviously JR was in a Mustang. I can't remember, was Pollock still in a Mustang then?
I forget what year he
Or
went.
maybe like Hotline. I mean, obviously his Hotline stuff was still. I can't remember if he was in an FC then or not, but I'd have to go back.
I think his like starting years, he was definitely in an FC, but then I can't. He was just talking about that too with Forsberg and Hamilton and that.
Yeah, exactly. And we both look like boobs here, but it's okay.
Yeah, it wasn't long until he got into a pony. That's for sure.
So
But
I mean, yeah, it was progression, and then you had the car for a while, and then jumped into a S197, then back into a Fox. What made you decide? Hey, I have this 30,000 mile Cherry '86 Fox body Mustang. I want to go do drifty boy things in it. What was the thought process in that?
Oh, the car that had the low miles was the S187, the first one. The
okay, I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. The Fox that I had, it was pretty cherry because in Wisconsin they were all garbage. Like no one had Mustangs or even Foxes up there. But it was from North Carolina, and I bought from my boss back in 2003. So it was a really good example of one. And I don't know. I guess Doug just pressured me into going, and I mean I was always horsing around in that thing too. So it didn't seem like I could hurt it. I mean, I basically, I knew what would. I actually did hurt it on that event because I spun out as all beginners do. Tried jamming it in reverse to be like do a J turn after. Reverse is not synchronized in a T5, so
no,
it was really upset. Plus, those cars, like it had some, if I remember correctly, it had some suspension in the rear, and axle hopped like crazy in reverse, and so basically it still I drove that car to the event and back still, but in reverse it sounded like it had gravel in it. Like those gears must have just because they're straight cut gears, non-synchroed, so it just probably chipped all the teeth, and it was not a happy camper.
Well, and then again at '86 it has the pan hard bar, or I think they call it what, the third member? Is that I don't know what the Ford term is it?
No, then from 79 to 04 they had a triangulated four link. So
really?
just like the old muscle cars, which is great for drag racing because it'll, it locates the axle real nice. But even to this day, like grassroots stuff, you leave a stock bushing in the upper arm so that the rear end can articulate. Because once you start adding like Heims or really hard like Darylin bushings or even polyurethane, you get a really bad snap oversteer because that thing will load up, and then when you let off, it'll just want to and the wheelbase is pretty short on those as it is. Because I think even with the angle kit, it added like the wheels move forward probably 1 or 2 inches, and I think it's still maybe 100-inch wheelbase with like in a drift spec. But
yeah, I mean that's very, very tiny. That's almost like a large Miata.
Yeah, it's just a large Corolla.
Yeah, 86 the 86 chassis. But I mean, Chelsea's been having some really great success in that white EcoBoost. But I think it's
for sure.
graduated to being less of a grassroots build and like a FD Pro 3 build almost.
I think that's maybe, I don't know if his build was because of it, because they recently allowed certain Mustangs of like the SN95. So we're talking 94 to 04 to use an aftermarket subframe and a specific one so that we have control of it. Because people that don't know, you're required to run a factory subframe so that all your suspension locating points are same as the next guy's, and there's no juicy fruiting around. But that same chassis is essentially like the Fox, and I think Chelsea was an advocate of like putting a bug in Kevin's ear to, the stock subframe gets in the way of this Mustangs. There's no real advantage of having a aftermarket subframe other than less work for us and less cutting up, and then you'll see less cars cut up, hacked up, because let's be honest, a lot of the FD builds are, they're still grassroots guys, and not everybody as a drifter was a mechanic before, and so they're all learning. as I'm still learning.
Well, you've got
every day.
You've got SN95. Talk about my local boy Adam Heisman in ProSpec.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he has the UPR member.
Exactly, and he does. But so you talk about the factory subframes, and one thing early on, this was like 2010s. One of the big, huge mods for a lot of the S13 boys was running an S14 rear subframe, and even though it was a factory subframe, it didn't come with the car. So you saw a lot of guys and gals they would almost have to go to a quick change just to get something that was reinforced to be able to have that structural stability that would mimic an S14 subframe, but would still carry the locator points. I mean,
interesting.
As far as safety, I think, wouldn't you agree that that's probably one of the biggest reasons why factory stuff is required when it comes to FD builds?
No. As far as
but that's why we ask these questions.
Yeah, as far as subframes, it's like I said, it's a matter of controlling those locating points, because Kevin's the reason why that's rules in there, because when he was on Forsberg team, they would shim the subframes. Well, this isn't exactly why they have to use the OEM subframe, but he would shim the subframes to get a lot of anti-squat out of the car, because he would change the angles. So then now we have inspections so that people aren't shimming these subframes, and those, I guess it does kind of tie into having a stock subframe, because if you lose that reference point because of an aftermarket subframe, then it's all willy-nilly in the Wild West. So I think it's just it's there to control, have a little bit of a level playing field, because I mean, we one of the few series in racing anyway that allows unlimited transmission, engine, rear end stuff. And there's guidelines that they got to fit with the firewall and stuff. I mean, a factory subframe is, a pretty small compromise, I feel.
Well, yeah, with a field, you had, 1 year you had the Heart of Racing, you had a Aston Martin, you got Sharifo with a Ferrari, and rotary powered Mad Mike coming over with a 1200 horsepower NC. It's nice to be able to see that broad field, but I think Mustangs are kind of like Corvettes. They've been really on like a fast upward trajectory in like the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. What are some of the advantages in the aftermarket community when it comes to Mustangs specifically that has helped make them so popular, Griffin?
I think it's because you don't have to swap the motor if you buy a GT. Like, I think whatever year you get, whether it's a 2-valve, 260 whopping horsepower, all the way to the new one, you get 460, 480 horsepower. You don't have to mess around with, a KA truck motor that's in a 240, and then they have all the room. So, and if you want more power, just slap a blower or something on it and be on your way. I think that's a big reason why they're upcoming. But also, like the non-V8 chassis are just silly cheap. Like, I see people buy the SN's V6 versions for less than $2,000. And the already aftermarket support for them, like we were talking about the rear suspension and Fox bodies and SNs, a lot of that, there's just so much choice. So like, basically, and I've squeezed into this market too, is just had to make a few drift specific arms and pieces to make it a reliable grassroots street drift car. And then you're not far from pro level. It's just basically all the arms and stuff get replaced, blah blah blah. But yeah, I think that's a big reason, is that you don't have to swap it out for an LS or JZ. You just keep it a purebred.
Even in the S197s 05 and up, you get a 4-liter V6 behind a 5-speed. That's the biggest 6-cylinder motor in any car that I can think of.
Yeah, and that's true. It's again, Ford loves using truck motors for their stuff, so it's basically the 4-liter that comes in that same year of like Explorers and Rangers. which is like, I think 210 horse, which is funny because the V8s used to make that in the early 90s, 80s. But I still would probably prefer a small block that had, but those V8s had like 300 foot-pounds of torque, where these probably had less than the 200 horsepower of torque. But yeah, and a lot of people, if like they have that 4 liter, I was thinking about the 3.8.
Yeah, the SN95 with a 3.8.
Yeah, I had a 3.8, but there was a 4.2 version of that that came in the trucks. Yeah, people could swap in.
Really?
Yeah. Not
Oh
that
yeah, no, I've seen them at F-150s. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. You might as well just go to a V8 at that point. But that's just my biased opinion, because I've always I've been made fun of because I've only ever drifted with 300 horsepower and more. I've never I mean personal cars. I've definitely driven cars that had less, and I was like, oh, that's what momentum is about. And then, not to go on a tangent or anything, but with that horsepower kind of discussion, even though I have like the average of my cars have like 400 horse, which is like pretty low these days. It's when I get to the big tracks, that's when you learn the momentum stuff that you should have learned with the low horsepower cars on the like kart tracks. But it's I digress there.
Well, yeah, momentum and weight transition, part of your fundamentals of drifting is a huge thing. And we talked about it before with a couple other guests. Stock E46, stock 350Z, stock TRZ. Just learn your car before you go and slap a blower on or slap a turbo on. And yeah, fundamentals before fast car.
Oh, for sure.
So,
like when I first built that Fox, like I didn't use the hydro, and I used just free mods that, shaving tie rods, this, and using Cobra arms to have more tire clearance, and did a whole year without, that stuff. And I think only one person told me, like, hey, once you get a hydro, it's going to open up a whole other world for you. But yeah, definitely when you get used to your car, then you kind of know it's like just a bunch of things going through my mind right now. But like, if someone was to be an absolute beginner and then they build a car, they don't know how that thing's supposed to act or react when it was like a factory type car.
absolutely.
You gotta ease into it like a gentleman.
Be nice to your lady car. Just be nice to her. So you mentioned being a part of the aftermarket community, not just for drifting, but just accessible for all types of motorsports. Can you touch a little bit more on that?
And what I do?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So my company, Make It Modular. It's kind of a play on words. Ford makes modular engines. Even the Coyote's considered a modular family engine, but it's also kind of a strategy of building things. Like, if you want to access something later on in your build, make it so that you can like take it apart in one big piece or modular, and then it'll be easier. But I just kind of have that mindset when I'm making even little parts for stuff, or just working on stuff in general. But what Make It Modular does, it's been growing into a more of a Coyote swap kind of business. I have I have one S550 drift part, which is, I think I just ordered more supplies for these rack spacers, which is a really popular item for a lot of chassis. And they're super economical to add a bunch of angle to an S550 Mustang to approach because those have a dual pivot ball joint. There's dual ball joint lower arms, and
very European,
yeah. And Ford left a metric shit ton of travel left on the table of the rack.
Really?
Even so much so, like, even in the tie rods, like, I could have made the rack spacers even bigger, but it was lying that borderline of like, if there's going to be enough threads in the rack to be safe. But that thing, like I was saying, I think and I say I'm still a one-man band, but I had to order a new supply of these things. And the last time I had to order some was a while ago. But now when I was doing the math, I think that's 100 cars that have these rack spacers on, or at least that's how many I've sold since coming out with them. Nice. And so, yeah, I was like, who is drifting all these things? And so we have the same product for S1A7 Mustangs. Those didn't leave as much on the table as far as rack travel. You get like, 5-10 degrees out of those. I think we get like probably 10 or more out of those S550 ones. And then we have a full billet armed angle kit for the S197s that I developed. I come from a machining background. That's what I did for 12, 13 years before venturing out on my own a couple years ago. And took what I learned on the Fusion. And at first, this kit had like regular tubular arms. And then I was like, I'm not a welder. I lose my ass putting them in my jig and welding them every time I get a kit. So I'm like, let's just take a page out of the RTR book. I know how to make aluminum parts. I lived and breathed the stuff, so made a billet arm out of them. So then I can just, here you go. And so that's one product, the drift stuff of Make It Modular. We do have a really cool, I call it hide a hydro handbrake kit for the S187 Mustangs. It doesn't really hide anything, but it maybe you could put a picture of this thing.
Well, yeah, we'll take care of this.
So I have it in my own car, but I developed it so that there be a pullback hydro handle that is all Make It Modular. It has like our logo in it. It's black anodized, but the brackets and the master cylinder are all hidden under the stock console, and you get to keep the shifter, like the whole console minus like the little bit we got to cut out for the handbrake. But the master cylinder sits in like the console where the storage is. And so if you're running a dual caliper, you can just open it up, check, that's where it hangs out. And so it all fits under the stock console. It's pretty slick. I'm pretty proud of that one. That's about it for drift stuff. I do want to get in the S550 game. I got some ideas rolling in my head to make kind of a bridge between our rack spacers and like between the full angle kits that are out there, like Synergy and Fun Haver have, and I think FDF have like really big elaborate kits that are their price point might be a little intimidating to someone who's in the grassroots, but I got an idea to maybe bridge that gap a little bit. So and then the Coyote swap stuff. So as people may or may not know, I'm a big Coyote guy. So big that I have yet to own a vehicle that came with a Coyote from the factory. I've owned a lot of Coyote engines. I've swapped, I think, 5 personal cars. I still have, not counting the truck, but it's definitely like 4 now. So
a man after my own heart with multiple project cars. I love it.
Yeah, but I like to be braggadocious that they now officially all run a drive. So yeah. So one big thing, I don't know if you've seen that blue car that I have. It has a 2F performance wide body kit on it. So I Coyote swapped that with a hot first gen back in 22. But I figured out how to do it and hardwired it so that all the factory gauges of the older Mustang, cruise control, and AC work with the Coyote ECU. It's only like 83 wires you gotta, yeah, it's only like 100 wires you gotta deal with. And I made a spreadsheet so you could like keep track of it. It's like interactive. So if you got to take a shit or go eat, then you can come back and pick up. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I can make this a harness that is plug and play. I'm like, so, and that's what I did. I came up with a proprietary resin 3D printed connector, and that was like the big thing to make that work, because no one makes like a male connector of what usually goes onto a computer. And then I think I've sold over 50 of those, or made 50 of those, because I was the only one that makes them. Like I said, one man show, and I came out with that in the middle of 23, and like people have swapped. Don't get me wrong, people have swapped the 05 to 10 Mustangs before, but they had to use like a Ford control pack, which is great. I love the control pack. I use it in the Fox. I use it in the Fusion. Super easy to wire if you're savvy enough with wiring. It's like 4 wires, and then it runs your fans, fuel pump, blah, blah, blah. It's great in a hot rod project. But the thing is, with these cars, the 05 to 10 Mustangs, the infrastructure is already there. It already has the fuel pump relays, the fan relays, starting relays, all that's already there. So my harness literally is just wires and connectors. There's no components other than connectors that is like the bridge to connect the ECU and the air conditioning and trans harnesses. So I use OEM parts like so we last year I bought another 08, and to kind of prove the harness out some more, I swapped that car. I had a drivetrain. The car was already running with the 4.6, and I swapped it with a Coyote running in like 14 hours with our harness and gauges, AC, cruise, all that works. Yeah. So
Okay. Okay, I need to take like a timeout because I know
okay, bye.
exactly what you're talking about. What you're talking. So, okay, I'm a Chevy LS guy. I've been a Chevy
Okay.
LS guy for the better part of a decade. There's a lot of stuff now that you're talking about, especially when we're talking about Corvettes, fifth gen Camaros, the Cadillacs. A lot of that stuff. CANBUS is a really big thing that
That's the biggest
wasn't
thing.
an issue pre '04, and that's when a lot of the GM motors you could use your little plug and wiring specialties or whatever, and you could do that. But I need to let people know the reason why is because your car talks so much more to you than you think, and being able to have this swappability, even though it's Ford to Ford, but being able to have something to communicate without having there's no security gateway stuff like there's in the newer Chrysler Hemi stuff, but
Yep.
there's still a level of communication that your car has to have for other systems to work.
Yeah,
Um,
we could go in a deep dive on this because now I applied that same concept to the
yeah.
2004 to 2008 F-150s. So I literally,
Oh,
yeah. So I just wrapped up. The truck is right outside the shop here. Just wrapped up. It's running and driving with the same gauges all working. And if you want to talk about CANBUS stuff, that thing taught me even more. So you talk about the CANBUS and these gateways. So there's like when I had to do a deep dive when I was having issues with this thing, which we may or may not get into, but um, there's like CANBUS messages that are required to be available at the OBD2 port for scanners and that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those same messages get sent to the cluster.
correct.
But so I was really fortunate that Ford um, made the messages compatible between the first gen S197s and the first gen Coyote ECU. There is still some little quirks here and there, like the reverse lights don't work because the CAN bus message is different. And then what is it? So it's a manual car. You probably know. You've seen like 90s or 2000s cars that have like an economic shift light.
Mhm.
So I unintentionally created one, and all the other cars do this. So it's a manual car, but it still has the overdrive off light of an automatic. So that light now acts as an economic shift light for some reason. I don't know. Like, it's so like I didn't know what it was doing at first because it's just coming on, and you like hold the gear, you're at light throttle, the light would come on, and until you shifted or did more throttle, it would go off. And I was like, oh, I know what it's doing. So, and then with the F-150, I just wrapped up. I wanted to make it all truck, and so I used a truck ECU, same first gen. But those trucks have a BCM, and then I learned the first startup of that truck, I unintentionally made a throttle gauge out of the speedometer. So you talk about like crisscrossing wires and messages. So you just turn the key on, you hit the throttle, the speedometer go to 0 to 120 with the throttle. I was like, what's happening here? I was like, how am I going to fix this? Because like this is supposed to be my bread and butter, my next big harness thing to release for the Ford guys. And the solve to that was using a Mustang tune. So my buddy,
Interesting.
my buddy Lethal Nate, he's in the south, I forget, but mid south, other side of the country, more towards your neck of the woods, and
Okay.
he sent me the first ECU, and then he sent me another one with a Mustang Flash, and then everything worked. Temp gauge wasn't full hot anymore. Speedometer worked, which is huge because no one like to get those to work in old cars. You either have a Dakota digital box to like infiltrate the CAN bus, and then the TAC always worked, but then the F-150 ECU didn't want to go to sleep. It was just always ready to party. It was always ready to party. And my first fire up, I turned the key off. The engine just kept running. I was like, sick. Because it has a wake up signal from that body control module.
Mhm.
The Mustang doesn't. So Mustang Tune fixed it. And that's a really cool thing about Ford is they have like this. It seems to be the same computer just with different strategies, and it's just looking for different things. But
I think Ford is really doing a lot more, and I say this with holding back a lot of anger. Ford is really doing a lot of stuff that is helping the aftermarket community more than any other in the big three, I feel, just out of the box.
As far, yeah, up until the newest Mustang, I agree.
Yeah.
Because
Well, the newest Mustang is a whole nother thing that just really is putting itself on the map. But
well, yeah, unfortunately, the sales don't show that, and the fact that no one can tune a 24 newer Mustang yet.
or build one, TJ Hunt, just
Whoops.
yeah. But no, but again, so some of the biggest advantages of the Coyote, I want to do a side by side here. So being an LS guy,
Yeah, let's
I have a
go.
lot of information on the Gen 1 Coyote. I know
Uh-huh.
for a fact, because I watch a lot of drag racing stuff, people prefer the Gen 2 for boosted applications. So I'm going to kind of give it a little bit of an overview. LS has been essentially the small block Chevy is a single overhead cam push rod motor with 2 valves per cylinder, obviously 8 cylinders, very archaic technology. Gen 1 Coyote is 4 valve dual overhead cam, but it's a 5 liter, so it's realistically 700 cc smaller than like an LS1,
Yep.
1,000 cc's than an LS2. But when you're talking about airflow and it's also a timing chain motor, and just all the properties that block does. I believe they're aluminum blocks and aluminum head.
Oh yeah, you can get an aftermarket Werewolf Coyote block, but I think I think they missed their audience on that one. But go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, but between those two, I see why people would want to just graduate into the Coyote motor. And is that kind of why you spent so much time in this Gen 1 Coyote swap stuff at MIM?
I think the reason I always seem to gravitate towards the Gen 1 stuff is because now I don't think I mentioned the Fox has a Gen 1 Coyote in it now after the 3-valve,
Yeah.
Took a glorious dive at a Grid Life in 2017, dropped a valve. And I was like, getting back to the modular thing, that's what's the beauty of Ford. Like, I always hear these different LS generations, different accessories, truck accessories, Corvette, GTO, Camaro. It makes your head spin. I was like, yeah, that engine's really simple, but then you got all this other details to iron out where Coyotes, it's
Yeah.
all shared. It's all the same. Whether it's a truck or Mustang, there's some nuances that we don't need to get into, but so being modular, I'm like, all right, my transmission's going to work. My motor mounts that were 2-valve 4.6 motor mounts will work on the Coyote. And that I had that thing Coyote swapped in a month after the 3-valve took a dive. So, and then the first gens are always been cheaper. Like back in 2017, I got the truck motor that's in the Fox. I got for like $2,600 shipped and I only had like 60,000 miles. And
Wow.
you put Mustang intake cams in it because the exhaust cams in the first gens are the same. So that thing rev limits like at 7,200 and lives there all day long. I just put oil pump gears in it and then party. And it has a Lund tune with headers on it. And it's my second favorite sounding Coyote that I own. And then I think it goes back to why I stick with first gen is because it's the most compatible with the generation of Fords that came out right before the Coyote. Like we're talking about the CANBUS stuff. I'm just fortunate enough that they kept those same, they're like IP addresses, I call them, if anybody's familiar with like networking, so that the clusters work. So I was like, all right, what's next on the list? Like I was either going to do the 11th gen F-150 or the 2005 to 2011 Crown Vics was my two choices because they share the same kind of computers in that generation. So, and then that's all. And like 0405 is the first year that Ford used CANBUS in any of their vehicles. But first gen, I mean,
it was about the same. Yeah.
First gen Coyotes, you don't have to do like they'll hold. A customer, Cody here locally, I put a turbo kit on his 2014 GT, and we were working through some wastegate stuff and boost controller this, and he did one hero run on the dyno. It made like 700 horse, but they'll live at 650 all day, especially a turbo. There's no stress on the crank and parasitic loss from like a twin roots, but they'll live there all day. But they're also $34 a piece rods away from holding 800. Like the Gen 2s, that's why the Gen 2s are so popular, is because, well, go back a little bit. There's also a Gen 1 variant called the Boss 302. It's called a Roadrunner.
Mm-hmm.
They have factory CNC ported heads and they have beefy rods. And then the Gen 2s used the Boss 302 rods, and they use as cast Boss 302 heads. So they flow just as good as Boss 302 heads from the factory. But there's also a guy, his YouTube channel is called Head Games, and I haven't fully watched it yet, but I think he does like a lot of flow testing and like shows the numbers of not just Ford stuff, but like K series and LS and stuff. And I got to see, because Alex Flores from London Tuning was kind of hinting that a Gen 1 head, when it's ported right, can be really good.
Really?
And yeah, so one thing to remember, I think why the Coyotes are so good is because they have twin independent variable cam timing. So you can make that power where you want it to. And then, so Gen 1 it's also I don't tune cars. I know enough verbiage to help tuners out and stuff, but they're probably the most simple to tune. Like LSs, they have one cam that's stuck. So there's probably one map. Is that, yeah? So Coyotes,
Yeah.
There's like 32 different maps. Like, depending on where the camshafts want to hang out and where you want them. Because I know in the tuning process, like Lund, they'll usually park the cams where they want it to get a base tune, and then they get the air fuel, the timing, and then they're like, all right, now it's cam time. Let's see what's going on. And
well,
the
then
cool part is
like phaser lockout and stuff like that, or phaser mild lockout, and then there's a whole other thing that goes in with that.
Oh, that's just like when I say lockout for tuning, they just do that in the computer to get so that it doesn't move, so that they know that there isn't like a time, or like the cams aren't interfering with what they want to in their tuning process.
Right.
And then they unlock it to further fine tune the cams. And I think it's really cool with first gens. I think all gens can do it, but they call it a ghost cam, where they just park the cams at idle and you can get the chop, and stock cams have a lot of chop. I have one on my Fox, but listen, whoever's out there and thinks bad about a ghost cam, like, why? I don't get it why people like come down on people wanting a ghost cam. Like, it's basically free and you get the sound, and like I don't get it.
Don't be mad at people who want to be parking lot pimping or
That's
stoplight
right.
pimping. Let them be themselves. Live your life. It's 2025.
That's right.
So we're talking about the Ford. I would say now we're talking about Coyote. The term illuminator that was used early on. Big fan of Kelsey Rawlings. S14 Ford supercharged V8. To my knowledge, she's the only one piloting a combination like that in Formula D right now. Why is that not something that we're seeing more often? Just based on all the pros that you mentioned about this quad cam 5-liter V8 or 5.4 in her case, that's just out there killing it.
I think Chris Leonard still has a Coyote bake motor.
I forgot about Chris. I apologize.
Yeah,
yes, you're right.
He doesn't have an illuminator. I think he has, I forget what, I think maybe it's either Texas Speed, because he lives in Texas, or RPG. I can't remember what short block he may or may not have, but.
Well, he's a Mustang though. Yep. Kelsey's the only one with a swap
motor.
Yeah, so I mean, but what's going on?
I can tell you why it's a Ford. It's because her dad's a big Ford guy.
Okay, well, that's a whole other reason, but
yeah,
we're talking about the grassroots thing too. Like, and why are these people still going with these LS240s when you're all these pros? Because I'll even agree, the Coyote's a fantastic motor. Why can't more people start going towards it for this reliable power?
Because they're fucking huge. That's why it's such a big motor. If you I'm sure you've seen like under the hood of Kelsey's car, like it's got at least 2 cylinders in front of the axle on each side. So
and that thing is at the firewall. The firewall.
Yeah, I just worked on a S13 convertible. I was like, how the hell does a Coyote ever fit in one of these things? Like, nope.
Yeah. Well, then you've got brake booster delete that you possibly have to do, and
which I wouldn't.
Right-hand drive, then you headers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which speaking of brake boost delete, I would recommend anyone even like semi-serious, if there's like a manual brake conversion on your car and you're semi-serious about drifting, do that, because once you learn how to left foot brake, then you'll know why. Thanks. The Fox and the Fusion are
We'll vouch
manual
for
brakes.
that, absolutely.
Yeah, it's if you set up the cylinders right, you won't even know. The Fox is the Fusion it's got a Tilton setup, so it was easy to set up. I used like a 90s Ranger MC for the Fox and it's okay. But
you work with what you got. Because I mean, realistically, when we're talking about price point, nothing's getting cheaper. We will acknowledge that. But even before all the craziness, when we're talking like say 2017, you said 2,600 for a dropout.
Yeah, and that was no transmission, but it had an engine harness, basically everything I needed there. Yeah, I didn't have to do much to the engine.
Please pause. Did you just say transmission included with the engine for 2,600?
No, okay. The engine harness was included. Definitely.
My heart.
But this was the motor I put in this F-150 had well over 100,000, but I bought locally from a yard with a transmission and the engine with transmission harness, full accessories, minus an alternator. I think it was like $3,800, and that's
still not bad at all. Wow.
Yeah, that's a like the 6-speed that comes behind any first gen Coyote is automatic anyway, is good, which we don't use that in drifting obviously, but because the 6-speed behind the Mustang that's the manual is really hit or miss. But the ratios are really good.
So it's a 6R80, I believe, on the auto side, and then is it a TKO on the automatic side?
It's a Get Reg MT82, so it's not even Tremec. Yeah, it's I swapped the last personal car Mustang I swapped. I bought a whole drivetrain that had one of those transmissions on it. I liked it. Like the stock shifter was even good. The ratios were fantastic. The car was geared terribly. Had like 331s in it, but the ratios in the transmission made you forget that. I was like, oh, I don't have to regear this car. The speedometers, and I swapped that car too, of course. And the speedometer's on. I drove it to Long Beach and back with AC and cruise working. But yeah, the 6-speed MT82, it has its faults. Like it's either people like to blame the transmission, but there's some user error and some aftermarket support that can alleviate some of those problems because they have weak shift forks. Is one big thing
on the Getrags, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, you're banging gears, and you don't want that kind of failure. I know the TKOs back in the 04 to 09s. Was that a TKO 600?
In the behind the 4.6s?
Shelby's.
Oh, the Shelby's had the from 07 to 2014 they had the TR6060, the T56 Magnum. But the regular
did have a 6060.
Yeah, that's what's in the Fusion. And which was a Tremec, but the regular GTs like the 4.6s, they had a Tremec 3650, which is a 5-speed, which is what I actually have behind my Coyote and my blue car. But
it's like a new age T5, right?
Yeah, it's definitely stronger than a T5 by far, but it's the ratios on it are still a little less than stellar. I have that car geared to 410, and I was like, I still think it could be 456, but the 410s definitely help.
One of the other things when we're talking about the S550s and the S197s is weight. Yeah. These are not light cars.
Not by any means, no.
Even with the 4-liter V6, I mean, you're pushing a lot of weight, but removing weight is one thing, but removing weight in the right places is just as important. What are some of the modifications you can do to help lighten some of these cars at a grassroots level, bang for your buck style, that's not going to upset the way this car performs?
Boy, that's a good question, because I've never had to add lightness or tried to.
Mr. 500 horsepower.
I mean, yeah, the 197 that I have now is 500 horse, but I have 2F Performance fenders on it. They're fiberglass and they're rear overs. The fronts definitely are lighter than the steel, but the rears are overs, so that probably added weight, to be honest. I've never really dug into that. I don't know if I have a good answer for you, Chris, but because I guess I feel like the chassis is so rigid and good from the factory that I wouldn't want to mess with it. I'll deal with the weight in some other way.
Well,
I'm
I mean,
sure you
compared
can
to like a Corvette,
yeah.
so you got to think that, because I have a C5 as well, and even though it's half a Corvette, it's still not a light car. So
Gotcha.
when we're talking about ability on the S197 side, what are you thinking as far as like coilover setup? Like I prefer a 20K 10K in my Corvette, and it works great for
Oh
me.
wow.
What are some rate? It's again with just the way they are with the track, and just me beating the absolute redheaded stepchildness out of it is just how I love to drive that car. What is some stuff that people need to look at when they're modifying the suspension that may or may not make this easier for a S197 or an S550 to drive?
Get the rear sorted out. A lot of people always want to focus on the front. With the 197 or 550, you don't even need angle mods to really get out there and have fun. Granted, we'll plug the rack spacers for Make It Modular. I mean, they're under $100, both of them are. So, but getting the rear sorted out, even if in the older Mustangs, is key. So the 197s are still solid axle. First thing I would do, get some lower control arms with lower control arm relocation brackets, so that the mounting point on the axle you can adjust and do your anti-squat. That makes a huge difference. And an adjustable pan. So the 197s are pan hard bar from the factory, and that's like, in my opinion, the second best way to control a live axle. The first being a Watts link, which it does feel amazing. And people are like, oh, it's not FD legal. I was like, you're not driving FD. Most of the people I'm talking about that stuff, you're not going to be driving FD. So I put a Watts link in that cherry first 197 I had, and it was so good. And then the 550, like I said, there's 4 performance spherical bearings to upgrade, but in like the control arm. But definitely like Vertilinks, like they have stop the hop kits from like Steeda and other companies. There's so much aftermarket support and like cradle lockout, so you don't even have to like burn out the bushings like old school and drill those things out.
Like
You
putting
can
the
just
Caltrax bars on some of the drag.
yeah, they they have like these either machine aluminum cups that go in like the voids of the rubber bushing, so then that it takes the squish out of it. Yeah, that's like, I think that's the big thing on the S550, because that thing just I remember when those cars first came out and they had under vehicle cameras, and you could just see the subframe doing some shifting and all the wheel just deflecting, and then after when they installed those kind of parts, and it was day and night. So yeah, definitely store out the rear, because then that's kind of what you're driving with when in drifting, right? So
At least trying to drive properly, and like you said, it's just starting from a donut and then being able to run a corner. If you don't have control of the rear, it doesn't matter how many degrees of angle you have up front. That thing is definitely just going to wash out, unfortunately.
yeah.
I think that, no, I'm going to go back to this one. With your participation in FD for the last, I guess, 8 years, if my math is right.
Yeah.
Not just talking about Mustang development. What is your opinion on just as far as the technology and just how far drifting has come, just from you literally being on the starting line and seeing these cars fly by you? What is probably, I don't know, what are some of your favorite things that you've seen that you're like, that's cool, I'm glad that's here?
Wow, it's a good one.
I mean, you're the guy. You have literally the best seat in the house when we're talking about up close and personal view of these things.
Most of the time, because I'll watch the cars in the burnout box a lot and see what they do, and kind of see what the fronts, like how much weight jacking is going on, like in that lead front left or right, whatever, which one's leading at the time, but and seeing how that car, I just love watching that and seeing that I see a lot more of that stuff going on. But it's funny because, and this probably isn't even going to answer the question, because you see a lot of different, like you have like a JTP style Mustang and then the RTR, same chassis, completely different setup. Like JTPs, when he accelerates, the back end comes up, and these RTRs are just like getting down. And like I said, they have like dynamic toe gain to change I don't know how it works. Never took a quick look at it, but I guess one thing I really like seeing is kind of go back to that modular concept is, the teams are not only having like spare corners for their cars, but just spare subframes that are already loaded with their brakes, quick brake line disconnect so they can get those things changed out in 5 minutes or up to 15 if need be. What else is there? I guess one of the biggest things I've seen coming out of as far as development is since WiseFab came out with that front rack relocation for the 240s. I thought that was really cool because from what I gather is a front steer car, meaning the rack is in front of the axle line is the jam. That's what you want I can't explain it. Kevin Wells once explained it, but I think it's just prone to maybe less failure. Or it's just more, you can control it easier. But
Kylie talked about it.
Who did?
Kylie talked about it. Kylie Mackey on his Cattlesnake, his Plymouth Satellite. I'm sorry, his I can't remember if it's a Barracuda or Satellite. So he used the BMW conversion to be able to go in the front with it, and it just less chance of binding. And when you're trying to go to opposite lock, it puts less stress, even if you have a Heim on that tie rod. So it's really more planar instead of multi-axis.
That makes sense. Because then, because when your lead, I don't know if we can do international drift hands things, but that makes sense without drawing a picture. Is that to unwind that car to come on an angle, it's you probably got to work for it more, or like that just geometry doesn't favor that.
At least the overcorrection and opposite lock and literally just trying to force the car out, and regardless of how much front end weight, if you've got maybe even load on the front. I wanted to make a point. You made a comment about JTP's car. His actually performed a lot like his FC did, just because that car was so naturally light in the rear. I ran a lot of Hotline products on my FD, and seeing the way he designed that FC was a bite car. So wherever he put those steers, I mean, it went, because I hate to say it wasn't exactly as heavy as a Mustang. It was probably about 800 pounds lighter.
That's
and
wild.
then also the tire choices, but that's a whole other thing. So we're talking about Kevin Wells a lot. We brought him up in the podcast. Kevin Wells, I believe, technical director for Formula Drift.
Yes, that's the official title.
So he's made a lot of great changes to the rule book over the years. I know have worked closely with him just because you want to be able to have communication between race control, you at the start line, and then Kevin making sure these cars are safe. What are some of the things that you've noticed that Kevin, I mean, if I get to talk to him, I'd love to, but what are some of the things that he really looks at when these cars are coming in that, safety is first? What is he looking for when these cars are coming in and doing their 5-minute competition timeouts or their 15s that at least you're aware of, that you even have to look for when they come to the start line, just to kind of double down that they didn't break from the pit to the burnout box?
Yeah, obviously the fluid leaks. What's he looking during a 5-minute call? I think definitely on the safety side of things, so we harp on him using jack stands, even if it costs you your 5 minutes, that's not worth your life. I mean, I'm sure you've seen
Christoph Blues.
Just gonna say that. Speaking of JTP, there was one, I think a steam fitting back in Irwindale that he couldn't get back in, and he didn't get his 5, and they couldn't run it like that, like having it spewing out. Just basic stuff that he's looking at that. And obviously the clock, because they have to, a lot of drivers or even teams don't even realize that they have to be off the jack stands and basically strapped in and running for it to count. Because a lot I won't name names, but there was one driver, I think it was last year or the year before, where I think he missed it by a second because something wasn't strapped in.
I think it was 3. I know.
So you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so
we'll talk about his name after this because we're not going to put him on blast.
Yeah, because Trey, Kevin's, we like to call him son, but he's Kevin's not assistant, because he does a lot more than just assistant Kevin. He's a smart dude, and not a happy camper again. He was, and that driver's usually really soft spoken. But yeah, just making sure that one wheel isn't hunting or fishing. That you could at least run it. Like there's been some stories. I don't think I've ever seen in person where I think it was, I won't name his name, but they tried to use a ratchet strap as a control arm, like to hold a link that was missing. And Kevin's like, nope. I do remember one time, it was the only time I went to Canada. And I guess since the track's not there, I'm not going to get in trouble, but their tow truck driver had Matt Field up, and like the back of the car like almost fell off the flatbed and actually damaged his drive shaft. Like, I don't know if he was, because I know he came back, because it was when him and Carney went into the wall, and Matt just dove right front into that, like took out the front of his car.
Montreal?
Yeah. St. Mustache or what?
Yeah.
I know it's not mustache, but it's whatever.
St. Mustache, we'll call it.
Yeah. And because that car had a, what a supercharger. It didn't have the twin root supercharger. The same setup he has in the Corvette now. Mm-hmm. But he got
ProCharger, I believe.
Yeah. And I'll never forget, because I heard over the radio that his car fell off the freaking flatbed, and he must have had a spare. And but he put it in there, but then the car came up missing. The supercharger wasn't hooked up, and I was like, oh, I guess he's going NA. And I think I remember him talking about this. He said that they still had just a nitrous, so they were just going to run it on nitrous, and that's exactly what they did, because they did like some tuning with no blower with just nitrous, and that's the tune they used for that run. But the whole front of that car was smashed. So there's stuff like that, like making sure, because at night we have to have headlights and stuff. And I'll never forget when Osmo's front end got taken out for whatever reason. I think it was in Texas, and I'm just like, see these little beady lights. I was like, those are someone zip tied flashlights to the bash bar. It's a good one.
I mean, I hate to say it, you've got even $250,000 builds where you've got grassroots ethics are still in full effect. I mean, just to remind where these guys and gals came from. So safety is a big thing we're talking about, Kevin. I know Make It Modular makes some really fantastic products. What are some of the things, one or two things that you think drifters try to skimp on early on just because of the money aspect, safety wise or just structural wise, that they really need to second guess themselves to save themselves headache or even danger in the long run?
Yeah, it's definitely the safety side. The seats, of course, and deciding if you're going to cage your car, what kind of harness. Because I battle that with my blue car, because it's such a nice street car. I'm like, I don't want to put a cage in it, because then it can no longer be a family car, because I haul my son in it all the time in the back seat. And but yeah, so a lot of people argue, what is drifting without tandem? So a lot of places don't let you tandem without a cage. So don't skimp out on that. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen horror stories of shoddy cages or stuff that oh yeah, it has sidebars, but they're like below your hip line. That's it's a good way to make yourself have two hip bones. And I guess I'm guilty of one, is bash bars. Not many people think about that, but it's hard, because a lot of people try and it's hard for companies to make a vehicle specific bash bar, because there's so many different bumper options out there. And so then you have to pay like a fabricator to make it to whatever bumper your car has. And I'm guilty of continuing to have the stock one on the Fusion. And luckily I've made it this far. It's been 6 years since that build's been done, or almost 6 years. And in the few bumps it's taken, I still have the factory bash bars. I wouldn't say it saved my ass, but they definitely weren't beneficial. So you can definitely look into that as far as maybe protecting the car a little bit better as an investment and not cheaping out on that. I think the next one would be probably getting a good steering wheel, something that's comfortable and like a good size diameter. Yeah, there's not many stock wheels that I would want to, have spinning around in my hands that I can think of.
Well, not even that. We were talking about earlier about CANBUS and some of these newer cars, people driving the newer technology stuff. Even if you unplug a lot of the airbag sensors and a lot of the fuses or whatever, so many modules are talking to so many different modules that if like, let's say you got into a really nice size impact in the front end in a Mustang, there is still a good chance that airbag could deploy in your face.
Oh, for sure.
And I think some people think, oh no, I pulled the fuse, I disconnected the sensors, and also with airbag seats in some of these cars. And I think that may be a facet that some people aren't thinking about, and just, hey, because I had an airbag deploy in my face in an E46, and
oh no,
it was exactly as bad as you thought it was. Even with a full face, it was just a bad day, and you could even be causing more harm than good on the passenger side with a passenger airbag, and then you're not just hurting yourself and you're hurting other people. Those are fantastic things. Do you think that price, now bash bars, I would agree, but I think wheels are not that expensive. Wheels and a quick release, or wheels and an adapter, I think that's a pretty basic mod and could even help with car control.
As far as like the wheels, when you say wheels, you're talking steering wheel, or like the wheels that are on the
steering wheel? Yeah. No. Okay. We could go on a black rims tirade for about 3 hours if we wanted to.
Yeah, if we want to talk about real wheels versus
wheels
reps, yeah.
No. This is not a stance cast.
If it's round and a tire mounts on it, we're good. If it looks halfway decent, that's all I care about.
So then, so we're talking about some safety things that they're skimping out on. You just bought a brand new to you 2000 GT Mustang 5-speed. What is the first mod you are doing to that Mustang before you go on a drift track?
Oh,
a 2000 SN95.
That'd be the first thing I would do.
We got to keep it budget friendly, because I mean, the S197s, I mean, we're talking, what's that? The 11 to 14 or 09 to 14 is that second generation?
05 to 14, the 197s?
Oh, the 0197. So, I mean, the V6s aren't as bad, but you start getting closer to those 2014 Mustangs, you're spending close to like 12, 15 grand still.
Oh, for sure. There's
so for 5Gs, do you think you can get an 05? Do you think you can get an 05 GT with a manual for $5,000?
Yes.
That doesn't have 250,000 miles on it?
Debatable. I'll tell you this, because I'm sure everyone's a marketplace junkie, and that car that I was talking about, I swapped last year to prove out my harness, was an 08. Had 180K on it, had a really bad ticking noise, but I drove it home with $2,800 less in my pocket. So
wow,
that was a 5-speed car. The body wasn't perfect. In Arizona, the bumpers like to take the UVs the most in the roof. It had some sun damage, and one fender had a good dent, but I mean, it was a driver. It got me home. The AC worked. I fixed, and that, so
interesting.
And that was the end of 22, or no, towards the end of 23, I think I bought that car.
Well, since you proved me wrong, I'll let you sub the car out for a 197. What would prove me wrong? I'll let you sub the car out for a 197. What would be the first mod for that 197 that you would do before taking it on track?
I would probably put my old rack spacers in it for starters, because they're like $50, and get a good seat, because I'm guilty of this as well. I've drifted now. Most of my SNs don't have or S197s haven't had cages, or a good seat, and I end up having bruises on the sides of my legs from holding myself in. Mm-hmm. So good seat with good bolsters. And talked about the wheel, but then I would sort out the rear end, get an adjustable panhard and some coils. Coils are huge. Like you talked about the rates. I think if you still have a sway bar in the front of those cars, I would do at least a 10K up front. You talked about how your 20K in the Corvette, it sounds high to me because it's a different style of suspension.
Absolutely.
It's all about leverage, without going up too far into the weeds. You need a lot more spring pressure because your ball joint's hanging out further from that mounting point, where Mustangs are still a modified McPherson, and it's like 90% of the spring rate is applied to that lower ball joint. I go like at least a 10K. I usually run like a 12 or 14 if I'm not running a sway bar in that car. And then whatever, like BCs come with, I think it's like a 4K in the rear, so they're pretty soft. But that's also like a direct. The springs are right on top of the axle, and then you sort out some relocation brackets, and like all these parts are pretty cheap. And I saw recently my car do just a burnout, and I have it like in the mid of the relocation bracket, and the car like lifted. I was like, sweet. So where it's not that hard to dial in.
4K in the rear is stock on aftermarket coilovers?
Yeah.
Like or standard, I would say.
Yeah, that's what they come with, unless of course you request. But yeah, that's what's I think that's what's in my Fox too. But the Fox just has lowering springs, and the lower control arm has an adjustable spring perch, so it really doesn't need coilovers. It has coilovers in the front, so that car is a different story.
It's really hard for me to wrap my brain around like some of this stuff when we're talking about panhard bars and going from a live axle to IRS, and even the IRS in like in a Cobra or S197 is way different than what you would see in a Corvette, just because of the way the transmission and the rear end is.
Mm-hmm.
With Mustang technology just literally light years ahead of where we thought it would be right now, what do you think is the next advancement that you really want to see the Mustang community come out with to further push the envelope when it comes to drifting?
Oh man, I feel like that's,
or maybe even something you've been developing.
Yeah. Like I said, I do have that bridge that I want to close the gap between like a rack spacer and like a full out fun haver FDF kit for the S550s. Just making that stuff, like that's another thing of like make it modular, is that not everybody is an alignment expert or knows how to work on cars. So I design a lot of my parts, including my angle kit, so that it's like set it, forget it. Have some adjustability here so you can have the alignment, but it should be pretty decent out of the box. And yeah, that's S187 still have basically what's in a wagon in the back, so there's not much you can do development there besides like the Watts link you could put in there. But as far as development,
I mean, there's got to be something that these teams. I mean, obviously RTR is doing something under a black cloak that we'll never see until it's on James or Vaughn's car, But I feel just like anything. Matt Field is pushing the envelope. C8 Corvette, and that thing is just leaps and bounds. S650s are like you said, a whole nother element. But the grassroots guys still have access to these 550s and 197s.
Yeah, and the 650s are literally just reskin 550s because all that stuff bolts on. So there's as far as like what's really cool is I really like that Ford has that drift stick in the new Mustangs. That's super. So it's because Ben Hobson told me it's electric over hydraulic, so he's like it feels just like a hydro. He's like it is amazing. So it's almost like they're using like sim parts and then using the computer to use ABS things that are beyond me. I mean, I kind of understand how they do it in theory, but I don't know exactly how they do it.
Well, it's a single rear caliper. It's not a dual caliper, correct?
I think it's dual caliper. I think there's the parking brake caliper, and I think that's what they're using for. Ben's told me like 2 or 3 times, and I can't remember if the parking brake becomes the hydro or it just stays a parking brake, and then the hydro ends up in drift mode becomes I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. Now a gentleman that I'm looking forward to talking to on here, Ben Hobson. He went from Odie's team, S14 pedal commander car, LS car, just a beast of a machine, jumping into this RTR Mustang in Pro because he graduated. Amazing progression, training time in this car. Essentially, a lot of stuff from Chelsea's build with it being the Pennzoil car, but does that kind of show how easy is the wrong word, how adjustable these cars are for skill to be able to jump into a Mustang and be able to translate to solid drifting?
I think if you ask Ben,
or is that the RTR button?
Yeah, he's like, no, it's not easy. He's like, that thing drives like nothing he's ever driven before. Wow. And even I think this even applies to a lot of the pro cars from what I've gathered talking to drivers, is like you either going to be on the gas or on on the handbrake. Otherwise, that thing is going to go where the front tires are turning like a normal car would. So that's the thing. Like they're just wound so tight that because I remember years ago, Vaughn was doing he had the pro car, was just doing a simple donut and had to pull the handbrake to control it. And somebody's like, "Oh, you can't even do a donut without the handbrake." He's like, "You have no idea what is going on with these things. Like, can you imagine 630 millimeters of rubber, like just in the back trying to break loose? The car's just gonna constantly be fighting you, no matter the power level. I mean, unless of course you crank the tire pressure up to like 50 pounds, but it's insane what those cars do. I mean, even across the board, not even just the pro Mustangs, but just the single digit tire pressures and the horsepower. And I just got done watching the Papadakis FD podcast, and he's like, "We stopped trying to make more power this year." So I'm like, "That's good." Well, speaking of East Coast stuff, I don't know if you watched Tony Angelo's stuff, and he went around like his old FD car, and he showed his the heck was it? It was the Scion, the '86 chassis or whatever, and it had like
not the TC. Was it the TC?
No, I think it was the FRS or whatever it was. It had. He's like, yeah, it says 850 horse, and it weighs like 2,800 pounds. I was like, we need to go back to that. Like, do like even Stuckey, his car is kind of following that because he's still on as of last year anyway, was still on a 255, and made his car lighter. One of his theories was that if he hits somebody, it probably won't move a heavier car as much in tandem. And but I guess on the other side of the coin, if a heavier car hits him, maybe it'll look more if he gets hit with a heavier car. But yeah,
I think that's a principle that a lot of grassroots guys are starting to see. I mean, obviously you don't have Roush Yates, 45 motor with a 300 shot of nitrous and this 1,200 horsepower, 9 psi on 315s. Something that I think the guys seeing, they're so gripped up, and guys that are going from Pro-Am into ProSpec or that are, I would say, very contentious or contender level drivers going from Pro-Am into ProSpec. We need to add more bite. We need to add more grip. We need to just, have the car in. On the other side of the coin, there is a reason that people loosen their setups up or just give it a little bit more shakiness. From your perspective that you've seen, you mentioned how gripped up some of these cars are.
Yeah.
What are some of the pros and cons? Like, obviously, Long Beach, if that car is too gripped up, that touch and go is a touch and slam into the wall.
Yeah, for sure.
At Utah, when you're doing 100-mile-an-hour entries, if you're too loose or too gripped up, you'll just drive through the sand or just slide all the way back. What are some of the pros and cons you think about maybe loosening these cars up to make them a little bit more drivable?
So one of the pros of loosening your car up, and I said this when we went through the ProSpec lineup last year with Jacob, I was like, just loosen them up, because the big pro is no one, including yourself in the driver's seat, we don't want to see you struggling to make a lap. Like, just put it down and you can make it more stylish. And isn't that what drifting's about? Like me, I'm not a big style guy. I usually go for function over form. And and usually let the driving, if you can like hang it, almost backwards, so that's not unchaseable or whatever. And it looks like you're driving with intent, which is one of Chris Uhl's favorite things he said in a driver's meeting when he was a judge. Just like if you have confidence, you can tell that you're not confident behind the wheel when you hear and this thing's just like struggling to go around a corner or like transition, and like even if it's slower and it's smooth, it's still going to look better than if the engine's bogging and it's like struggling to make smoke and it's not at a lot of angle. So the con to that is I think everyone gets caught up in the back of their head is, well, what if he's faster than me and I can't chase him? Well, either got to have a gentleman's agreement. Maybe you guys should all just slow your cars down, or just unfortunately, I haven't driven enough situations because I don't chase enough, and I wish I did, just to take angle out of the car to get that proximity if that's what you need or want, or just overcommit. So that's definitely one of the cons, is that people are worried about getting gapped or whatever. So I think
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think fans would like it too. You
Go
know,
ahead.
if they weren't, if let's say fans aren't going to be able to tell if you're 5 miles an hour slower, but if you're both 5 miles an hour slower and you're that close to each other, they're going to notice that. Not when one
And
guy's just blasting away and this guy is.
it's a showmanship sport. The X factor is still a judge criteria. It's 10 points now for a reason, right? And I think if
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to put down that lap of style and you're in there fighting the car, I have seen it a lot more in ProSpec because people have been messing so much with tire pressures and rebound and trying to get these rears to just dig in like some of these pro cars. But I mean, that
They don't need to.
255 GT Radial is a fantastic tire, but even it has its limits.
Yeah, and there's a couple things. Like now, being a ProSpec driver is the best thing ever. Or you're kind of in like not the pinnacle, but the golden era, because now it's easier to get in competition because we have seating. But not only that, but we do a top 32 and not a 16 like back in the Pro 2 days. So
Yep.
you make a good line whether you're in the seating or when we did qualifying, you'll be in the show. Like just drive. Like my favorite line, one of my favorite lines from Die Hard is just when he says, "Just drive the car, man. You'll just you'll be okay." And now I might have forgotten my second point. So we're talking about
the
keeping the cars loose. Yep, I forgot already. Dang it.
I mean, that's a good point, though, because you spend a lot of money gripping a car up. It's not just, I mean, the S550s obviously have the mechanical advantage, but there's so much more that goes into building a drift car to be able to make it competitive that you just can't expect S550 cage, hydro angle, go win a ProSpec, event, right? Like there's more to it.
Like and plus if you're that much gripped up, you risk, more part breakage like axles and studs, there's no one immune to that.
Yep.
Bugging me, I can't remember what the hell I was going to say. So we're talking about
just like any other
this. Yeah.
Like any other ADD person, you'll definitely think about it mid-sentence for something else, and we can come back to it. But
yeah, it's definitely because I said, "Oh, I got two things," so my brain decided to cut the other one out.
Well, let's talk about something else that's been influencing a lot of grassroots drifters, Pro-Am, ProSpec, and pro guys: social media.
Okay.
Make it modular and yourself. I like your social media presence. You say what you have to say. You did a great piece when 2F put out the Mustang kit on your car. I remember that was a really big deal in the Mustang community because it's not just for drifting. Road race guys could be able to enjoy it. SCCA, anybody that would be able to benefit from aftermarket body parts. When it comes to social media, what are some ways that it's helping advance grassroots drifting specifically? And what is a way that it is hurting? I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I got a couple. No, I just jinxed myself again, but
nope, he dumped it. We got one.
Jacob kind of brings us out where it's like we're in this era where we don't have to do as much research or not even research, just trial and error of parts and like what works on your car and what doesn't. We can just swipe the card, have it here in a few days, bolt it on, go party. And as far as social media goes, like it's advantageous if you're a semi-serious grassroots, but even grassroots drivers can get sponsored. It's easier for them to get exposed than it was back in, even just 10 years ago. The downside is that if you're caught being a clown or something, I know there's this one guy who has my rack spacers and, I can't, it's more of being naive. He's like, I don't know, like what I need from spot. You like, basically, sorry. He's like, will you sponsor
me? Please.
Like, it's yeah. I'm like, look, because you mentioned me and all your stuff and whatnot. This is how you approach this. And I can show you my deck when I used to ask for stuff too. If you need a reference, because it was funny because I basically got screenshots of notes from the iPhone of like, oh yeah. I was like, okay, what are you asking for? Like, there's no deliverables or like what do we both get, blah blah blah. So like going back to like acting like a clown. So one of these drivers that has my parts on it, like he was posting, like, he has a really good following, but he does a lot of street stuff. And then his car got impounded. I was like, man, do I really want to, be having my name on someone that's like doing a lot of street stuff, or, having even their car impounded and whatnot. But sorry if you know what I'm talking about, you know who you are, but it's tough, man. That's just the way it is. Business is business.
No, but it's the same song and dance. That I mean, social media, if your job, your school, your relationship. I mean, your life is on 24/7 visibility of how much you want to put out there or not
Sure.
put out there. So if you want to be someone who's either taken seriously or be able to ask a company for money or parts, and yet it doesn't align with their reputation, you kind of got to suck it up, Buttercup, and know that you either do better or just don't ask. Since you are a manufacturer of parts, what is I ask all the companies this: what is one way that, if, let's say, hey Matt, I want to be sponsored, what is the best way I could be able to approach you when it comes to forming, I'm using this word correctly, a partnership versus just saying, hey, can I get sponsored?
Yeah, it's like, how do you want to, partnership, and how do you want to collaborate on stuff is, like, I think the big thing. Like, one guy, I gave him a discount on an angle kit, because he asked for it, like, straight up. He's like, but then he went above and beyond, and that's a big thing that a lot of even like pro drivers have done. And what my wife suggests doing is, like, even though if you like lay out what to do in your sponsorship, the sponsee should usually do more, or like even deliver more than the bare minimum that they promised. Because this gentleman, I'll say his name, Brian, out of Texas, huge supporter. He made an install video of our angle kit better than I did. It was like,
wow,
thanks, man. That was well worth the discount I gave you, and had our name on his livery, so it was like super. I was actually pretty humbled by that, because I'm, still a one-man band, and just trying to. I always like to call myself RTR light, but it's definitely probably less than that. Because once in a while I'll talk to Vaughn, and I'll be like, he's like, "What do you do?" We were talking at the bank with this last one, and I was like, "I make Mustang parts." I was like, the rack spacers stuff. He's like, "Oh yeah, we used to make those way back then." I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure you did."
It's like Johnny Walker and Evan Williams, if we're talking about whiskey.
Okay, I'm not a big booze guy, but I got the reference.
But the same thing is that it's still needed. There's still a market to it, and we talked about rack spacers actually my first episode here, and I'm not trying to, again, tangent too much, but
nope.
Fundamentally, a rack spacer really is like the modification that will tell, hey, do I like this drifting thing or not? Because it really doesn't do anything to the car except giving you just that more control. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's like one of my big sell points. I was like, you get to have more angle, so you can go pretend to be a drifter, but also maintain the street manners of your car. Like, the best way to put it.
I like that.
It'll, yeah. Which is
the selling point is simple enough.
Yeah, like you don't have to sacrifice anything to make your daily a race car. You just put in whatever rack spacer, and then it can do U-turns in the parking lot easier, in the street, and have a little more recovery angle when you're trying to drift your car at the track.
At that point, if you have an S197 or an S550 and you don't have Mega Modular angle spacers on there, your rack spacers, you're ridiculous, because that's, you said 50 a side, so $100 for a pair.
No, it was 50 a pair for the 197 and 75 for S550. Yeah.
You can't even buy like bar stock anymore for $50. So I mean, good.
Yeah, I mean, because my business model, like I said, I'm a CNC background, but it's more advantageous. I'll design everything, because that's what I used to do in Fusion 360 or SolidWorks. But I'm way too I can't afford SolidWorks. I don't know if you have ever seen the price of a seat, yes, but it's not cheap. Fusion, perfect. But I'll design them, and then I let someone else make them, and it's just way less stress, because the stuff that when I was first developing the angle kits, I was making on like my manual drill mill sitting over here, and I was like looking at the price of how fast these guys can make it. I was like, this is so worth my time. Yeah, big shout out to Oshcut in Utah. They make a lot of my laser cut and bent parts on angle kits and brackets for like the Coyote swap stuff. And you look at the price, you're like, how can they even make money out of this? And because they even have like in-house powder coating, so I'll get like a bracket for the lower control arm and stuff. It's powder coated. Yeah, just put it in a box and that's it.
Being a one-man band, I think being able to outsource a lot of the non-quality control stuff is probably one of the benefits. But still, because your name is on it, I mean, you're still going to do your testing, and there's something to be said still for the made in America and these small companies. So let's see, we've got family man, we've got small business owner, we've got drifter, we've got Mr. Arm Drop Extraordinaire. But recently, you made the move from Mr. Arm Drop to the booth for ProSpec. You are joining Jared Deanda.
How could I forget?
Can you tell us what happened there? Because when I saw you, I'm like, hey, I know that guy.
You're like Leo. So another lifetime ago, I used to announce BMX races in my hometown, just voluntarily. And I was also in a band, so I was like not socially awkward in front of people. So it's actually easier to talk into a big crowd than it is like a few people. For me, anyway, still kind of that way. So let's go to it's the year 22. Son still hasn't been born yet. The FD was going to do demos at the LA Auto Show. Right outside. So that's in November. It was like Thanksgiving weekend. I flew out, and the only reason was Sage caught wind. I forget who told him. I think might have been Kevin. I don't know. He caught wind. He's like, hey, I heard you like to, have some MC background or whatever. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll do this. Because I think Jared wasn't available or whatever. So flew out to LA for the weekend because we did 2 days, I think, of demos, which is super fun. And then that was also this transitioning year that so we transitioned to 23, where Longtain stepped back from announcing. I can't remember if that was his last year or not, and he still judged. Man,
I think he went to judging. I think because Chris, I believe when Chris fully stepped back, or right around there.
Well, Chris just stopped being a judge and went to race control for this year in 24. Because Pat Gentili's last year's race control was in 23, and that's the same. Oh man, is it? Anyway,
well, because you got the rotating judges, because you've got 4 technically, and then you got 3 that are on the thing, and then one I call the cattle herder. He essentially plays that role. The last 3 years, I mean, it's been a musical hat thing.
Yeah, the 24 season was the first time we've had 4 judges on staff. But anyway, so Longtain was stepping down from announcing, and so that year Sage still did pro, and then 23 was the first year that I did ProSpec. But I also did to kind of dip my toes in the water, I did the Super Drift the weekend right after Long Beach. So went back to Long Beach after doing regular FD Long Beach, and had my stomach in a big knot there and did the Super Drift. Like it was so bad. Like I was so nervous. And then Jared, I was a wreck. But I got to go do it and like reset the next day, and it was a lot better. But Jared makes it really easy because he's been doing it forever, and he's, he will out MC anybody under the table by far, like just coming up with random stuff. But yeah, so but before I did the Super Drift stuff, Sage reached out and was like, hey, would you be, interested of moving things around and having a change? Because I think that was the 20-year anniversary of FD was the year that I did ProSpec for the first time announcing. So he's like, in the light of that, so I did that. And then been on board again for now the 3rd season coming up for ProSpec. So yeah, little double dipping, get to play on the start line and, call out the replays and hang out in the air conditioned booth on some of those hot and humid days on the track. So get to wear shorts to work a few days out of those long weekends. So yeah, it's super fun. I like not only the factor of being a little more comfortable during the day, because we do some long hours on the track, right? Even on just regular pro days, it could be 12 hours at a time. But I really love like talking and putting my perspective to things. And I've been getting a lot of good feedback of people like, yeah, I really like knowing what or not knowing, but they like hearing what I have to say, I guess, which is kind of a weird thing to say, because I am a driver and I have a technical sense, and I kind of have this knack of explaining to people without getting too out in the weeds. Like we've gotten into I didn't think we were going to talk about CANBUS stuff today, but
I'm gonna run your brain, sir. You never know what's gonna happen when we talk.
So at least trying to make it so that the general public or the audience can understand what I'm talking about when certain things are happening on the track or why the car did a certain thing, and trying to add my little, Soppa isms, as people call it, to the mix. But yeah.
I will say your nickname that Jared, I don't know how long has that nickname been the standard?
I think almost 5 years. Yeah, I can't remember when we first debuted it, but it might have been when I first started announcing. So yeah, I don't know, because like sometimes yeah, because sometimes I do the start and then sometimes the tracks I'll do the finish as well because if it double backs. But so yeah, a lot of screen time for this guy for being, one of the track rats.
Well, for those of you that have not ever watched a Formula Drift live stream event or been to a Formula Drift event across the country, there are 2 announcers along with the 3 judges that are separated. You have obviously Mr. Jared Deanda that does both pro and pro spec. Jacob Gittins takes care of pro, and then obviously Matt, you take care of it. Jared is pretty much in charge of the live action commentating, and then you came in and did the technical side of things, with what Ryan used to do as well. And that dichotomy, I mean, it really is a dual personality thing, because you can't have 2 hype people when you're talking about transition, because you get to look at slow-mos, you get to look at replays, and you really get to kind of break down, as well as when they go to transition to the judges who can talk about stuff. And they've been doing that more in the past 2 years, getting these judges like, hey, he parked it here. I don't care what the D-cell lights say. This is what we talked about in the driver's meeting.
Yep.
Can you kind of explain on a grand scale why drivers' meetings are so important in drift events, period, because of just what they bring to the table for those that maybe have never attended a driver's meeting?
Yeah, because they're really trying to see what the judges want, because you'll notice a lot of, I don't even know if it's out there publicly, but I hear this a lot, that drivers have to kind of compromise or sacrifice the way they drive so that they can do the course like the judges want. I've heard Chelsea say that, JTP, others. A lot of people don't sacrifice, because I know Justin was like, no, I'm going to drive the way I want. This is the way. I think Forrest Wayne would be that same way. He's like, I'm just going to do what I do. And if they don't like it, then too bad. I'll put the car where they need to, but I'm going to do it my way. But yeah, drivers meeting, that it's the best way to get to know what they're looking for. And especially unfortunately, a lot of times drivers tend to focus on one part of the course when there's like 99 other parts of the course, and we often get caught in the weeds there. But yeah, because there's a lot of stuff that they need to know, like in certain situations, what to do or what's going to happen, or which way a call is going to go if like someone decells here or hits there, blah blah blah. It's very important. Then there's still guys that will mention stuff, especially like on the trackside stuff. They're like, oh, this is where you go here. They don't listen. I swear they're only there to listen to the judges, and even then it's like hit or miss. I don't know. But being on the Pro-Am stuff, and even some of the grassroots stuff, it's easy to forget what happens in the driver's meeting. That's why it's good to have a good spotter that takes notes.
Listening during the driver's meeting is something that I think that still is to be that one guy that will just be in the driver's meeting and then do at least 1 to 7 things that we said not to do in the driver's meeting. And then so like, oh, why are you guys mad at me? I don't even know. And then
always it's you can almost bet on it.
So without naming a name, what is one thing that you've seen in FD that was definitely gone over in the driver's meeting that somebody did on course that just sticks in your brain as like, this person is just completely ridiculous and out of line? There's got to be something over the couple of years you've been working with them.
I mean, just in general safety, it wasn't mentioned in a driver's meeting, but in New Jersey where I go, even Michael does this in ProSpec, where we go under the bridge to go, point at the winner, and someone was mad, and like by the time I realized what happens, they flew past me at like, I swear to God, it was 456 miles an hour, and I was like, what is going on here? And even their team chief guy was like, you almost hit Soppa there. Like, oh no, he's okay. I was like, yeah, I'm okay, but Jesus wept, dude. Like, come on. And then one time in St. Louis, someone wasn't happy with the call. They did a burnout to go back to their pits and like hit one of the start cones, and it caught the rear wheel and just chucked it right into my leg. And like, they're rubber, but when they're flying at you, I was like, that didn't leave a mark, but I was not happy. And then he came back, I think it was that one more time or something, and then he was really apologetic of it because you don't mess with the track staff.
Don't you hurt Matt Soppa? He's a national treasure.
I always mess with those guys. I'm like, oh, so you want it incomplete with 3 restarts? Cool.
Start kicking over the start cones.
This is why we can't bet.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing that I don't even want to get into with anybody because it's just it's a topic. So I've had a lot of fun. I want to slowly wrap this up because I think there's still a little bit of nuggets left on the table.
Yeah, let's nibble.
What's one piece of advice you could give to the grassroots drifter who is just starting out, sub 2-3 years in this sport, to maybe not step on your own ding-a-ling or tatas in around new drivers or new tracks? What is something that they could do that would maybe make them a little bit more, I don't know, just ahead of themselves or ahead of their class?
So I've been waiting for an opportunity to talk about this.
Yes, I did it.
And this can even go all to the pro guys. I will fully judge you as a start person on how you give me a thumbs up or okay that you're good to go. I've said this once in a driver's meeting that I was race control putting together a comp for locally. I was like, I pointed right at Forrest Wayne. He's like the best affirmation I get. He pink glove out the window, like, I know you're ready. And then everybody did that event. I was like, yes. So now a lot of start people, I deal with this even locally, they kind of suck. They'll have their back to you, and then they'll be just like, okay, go. They won't give you any eye contact. But if they're like a decent human being and they're like giving you eye contact and want affirmation, give them some big movement in the car. Robbie Nishida was one. Give me the 2 pieces. I knew he was ready. I only got to experience that 1 year because he retired the same year that I started, but now he's with us with judging. But that's one big piece of advice I can give someone. Just give your start guy good affirmation.
It's something just so simple that I would have never thought, but anytime that you would, I wasn't ready, or false start, or I didn't see the starter, and all that stuff is kind of nixed when you're like, and
get a lot of guys on the wheel will have their little routine and stuff, but a lot of guys, I mean, it ranges from like even the OG guys, they don't do it as much. They're pretty good about giving the thumbs up, but it sucks when at night there's glare and they have black gloves. It's really hard to see. But one telltale sign is you'll hear the dog rings. That's when that's a thumbs up when that thing jams into gear. So
I love that sound.
It's a good sound.
Be a person that is just nice to your start line guy or gal.
Yeah. Don't do cookers and grid and driving 40 miles an hour in grid or in pits and stuff like that. And that's how just doing stupid shit like that will have less events, even though we're probably on an uptick of drift events ever. But you never know. It's a fragile ecosystem out there.
Just be a good person and just be smart, and that's probably the easiest way to wrap that one up. So, Matt, I have had so much fun tonight, and wherever you are at, I had a lot of fun. I want to give you a chance to be able to plug anything and everything Matt Soppa and MIM. Where can we find it? What are the sites? What are the tags? How do we find what's going on in your work?
All right. So Instagram is Matt Soppa, as it's spelled. Make It Modular is a little different because I think someone else took it. So it's make.it.modular. And also that's on Instagram. But YouTube, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to find YouTube. The channel's under my name, Matt Soppa, surprise, surprise. But even if you just search V8 Fusion, it's probably it is the only one on there. Forgot to mention, that car was on Hoonigan when it first got built. But so you might find that video if you search V8 Fusion. So yeah, we're at milestone there. We just reached over reached over 10,000 subscribers on there not too long ago. So I'm pretty pumped about that.
Congratulations. Yeah. That's fantastic.
You don't get those plaques, but because a lot of the business has been funneled through there, which is surprising. So and like you mentioned, I appreciate you saying like my content is, and from a lot of my friends have said that too, where I'm just like, here's what we're doing. Let's get to it, and then the website for Mustang and Coyote drift parts and Coyote swap stuff is, again, it's not one word, but it's make-it-modular.com. So, yeah. So big shout out to my wife, Rebecca, let me get on here on a Sunday evening. I know she's probably chasing Abel around, our son. He just turned 2 a little bit ago. And yeah, this is good stuff.
I had so much, again, I keep saying that because I've been wanting to talk to you. I've had so many questions. I really am glad we got to chew into some meat and potatoes of not just the Ford and the stuff like that, but just really to show that drifting can offer you other opportunities than just going and be an FT Pro driver. Just being able to work on the technical side, being able to work in the booth, and then still being able to have industry contacts as a business owner to then kind of be able to dabble that as well. So you are, sir, a jack of all trades, and my cap is off to you.
A master of none. I'll tell you that for free.
Gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Chris DeBoer. Shout out again to my sponsors, Zeknova US, Stage Wheels, Velocity USA. You can find me on Instagram at Debo the Comic, Chris DeBoer on Facebook, and you are watching the Dirt Drop Podcast on YouTube. We will see you on the next Dirt Drop. Don't forget to keep drifting fun. Take it easy, guys. And that's it. We're done.
Peace.